live. Welcome everyone who's joining us from Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and those joining us live here on Zoom. We're chatting today with Lisa and Adam of Synecdoche. Did I get that right this time?
You got
awesome. A great architecture and design studio based out of Ann Arbor and Detroit. They'll be talking with us today, going through some of their work and answering your questions. So I'm excited to show you their work. Starting off, I do want to say these Zoom chats are provided free, and we like to do it to inspire and show off some great creatives to the community. And we don't really ask for much in return. It's part of AIJ Detroit, but you know, for this month, we want you to, if you support these sort of talks and you want to see more of them, please consider supporting a couple of these great organizations in our name. We have 4 that we've been trying to highlight here this past month, and hope you consider them valuable too. First off is the Detroit Justice Center, which is a nonprofit law firm working alongside communities to create economic opportunities, transform the justice system, and promote equitable and just cities. We also have the Michigan Liberation Group, which is a statewide network of people and organizations organizing to end the criminalization of Black families and communities of color in Michigan. They envision a state without mass incarceration or mass policing. So 2 really great organizations there. There's also the Michigan Solidarity Bail Fund, which is a project to bail out those most in need and those who put themselves at risk for fighting for our collective freedom. It's a bail fund that's operated to help those who are protesting right now against the current injustices and make sure that people aren't affected by, you know, the bail system, which, as many of you know, is incredibly predatory. And then finally, because it is June and it is Pride Month, I do want to call out a really great organization, the Ruth Ellis Center, which is a center here in Detroit based for LGBTQIA+ youth and young adults, with an emphasis on young people of color who are experiencing homelessness, involved in the child welfare system, and or experiencing barriers to health and their well-being. They're a great organization. All 4 of these could use your support. Consider giving a little bit of your time and money towards any of those, and they're doing good work out there. So consider them. One other call out, we also have 2 poster exhibitions by a studio that's a good friend of AIJ Detroit, DMJ Studios, run by Donna Jackson. She's got the Posters on Politics show and the World After show. The Poster on Politics show has been going on since 2017. Small poster show highlighting some of the best work, talking about, you know, politics, what's happening in the world right now. There's a lot to talk about. And then there's finally the World After show, which is talking about what the world's going to look like after the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Both of them definitely could use your great work. Head over to DMJ Studio. Sorry about the truck. Heading over to dmjstudio.com, and you can sign up and learn a little bit more. So I'm gonna kick it back over to Lisa and Adam here to talk a little bit about their studio. I'm gonna stop sharing here so you guys can share your screen. If you'd like to introduce yourselves, talk a little bit about what you're doing, and we'll jump in here in a second. If you have any questions, sorry, lots of trucks going by my house right now. If you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen or type it in chat. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, comment there, and I'll make sure that the questions get into the discussion here on Zoom. So Adam, Lisa, how you doing? Good. I'm gonna kick it over to you.
So I'm Lisa Sauvé.
I'm Adam Smith.
We're co-founders of Synecdoche, and we'll show you. I think it was great that the premise of the talk brought up a lot about our core values and vision. So I think we're going to kind of talk through that stream as how we approach our work. So I'm going to start right here. So when we started, actually, a lot of the work that we did in the early days, we were just doing it. We had to kickstart. We started as 2 undergrads at Lawrence Tech, looking for our first job in 2009 during the recession. And so really a lot of how our work started was just by doing things, which came part of our motto. It was kind of a natural kind of phrase that we kept just saying, do good work and people will notice. It's a bit different than work hard and you'll get ahead, because it doesn't guarantee kind of a successful metric, but it does kind of point to the effort, the values, and the kind of drive to keep doing things. It spurs into conversations, it leads, and it has momentum. So do good work has always been our value and kind of our guiding light, which has really helped shape the studio as a whole in terms of the types of projects that we take on, the types of projects we don't take on, and the kind of spin-off things that we do as well. So just in one of the first things we did when we got our shop space was paint this mural that you see here, do good work. And since this is also a graphic organization design now, which we really appreciate too, you can actually see the subtleties. We designed this graphic based on the grid that was naturally in the OSB to start to connect dots and make this kind of geometric graphic. From that, you can see in the middle under the work is our logo. So we actually didn't really design our logo. The logo actually found us as well. So just a little side note of subliminal messaging from
Yeah, that was painted before we had a logo.
Yep. And then we were like, we should have a little mark. Oh, look, found one. So we're going to talk actually through kind of our 3 vision statements that we have in terms of how we do a lot of work. The first one is elevate the mindset of the Great Lakes region as a design hub, right? And so there's a lot of different ways that we try to reach out and work with the community on projects to make sure that we're not just being in the service industry for design, but pushing design as entire industry and profession in the area. So we'll talk through kind of a few projects. One of the first ones is Super Temporary, which is an installation we were invited to do by Festifools, which is an organization in Ann Arbor that does a luminary parade along with
a gateway and party at the Carytown Markets and Shops. So this was kind of a quick, we had one day to build it, and this is why we call it Super Temporary. We built it in the one day and then had to take it down at midnight that same day. So it was kind of a test of, okay, we have to throw this thing together and then take it down right away and have it be reusable and or recyclable. So all the green is actually biodegradable plastic.
Sorry, hold on.
Did we lose you?
Sorry, there you go.
Okay. And then this is spurred on now. This is from last year. This is spurred on. I'm on the board of the AIA Huron Valley, which is a group of the American Institute of Architects local chapter. And we did a competition this year to do another installation, to do another Super Temporary installation. So we had a call for entries. We did all that, but this was supposed to be in April, which obviously, so this didn't happen this year, but we're still waiting we're going to make sure it happens again. So we tried to use this first attempt as to kind of instigate a new annual installation competition with a local nonprofit group.
Yep. The next one we did, we'll just kind of keep going to a couple of competitions. Another kind of community engagement, we worked with the Ann Arbor Art Center. So again, another kind of design hub within our community to do a pair of installations for what was an annual design festival, PopX. So we did this balloon one in collaboration with a couple artists to talk about the message of water. And so the playfulness of the water balloons, and then it was also lined with these emergency water bags on the inside. And so the idea that a vessel for water was both playful and very precious. especially when we were talking about the Flint, which is still a thing. This was completed in 2016, the Flint water crisis, and that water itself and how we think about it can be either very candid or cautious, depending on how you frame it. So this, with the Ann Arbor Art Center, we really engaged in a strong relationship, and we did efforts like Parking Day, if you've heard of it, which we're seeing a lot now, that streets are just being shut down to be pedestrian friendly, to allow people to space out. But Parking Day, we hijacked a series of parallel parking spots in downtown to invite more installations and other organizations to do that. And now we're actually kickstarting for the rest of the summer a murals festival in Ann Arbor. So 10 murals going up in the next 10 to 12 weeks through late summer, early fall. Again, to invite more artists and creatives out into the public to do a lot of that work. So for a lot of the opportunities that we get, we try to figure out how to build the momentum to pass those opportunities along through kind of the next sequence of projects. And a lot of that really came about when we were students, right? And the first project that we got was just a very small project with a very small funds, but that first project led to some awards, some recognition, building our portfolio to get additional awards. And so another way that we're trying to really establish a design hub here is to support students right now through University of Michigan Taughman College of Architecture, through a small research grant to allow mini stipends for independent work that we hope spurs into entrepreneurship, new offices, new prototypes, new products that could be established in the Midwest. Because we think that while there's a lot of coastal design scenes, there's a lot of work that happens here and it has happened here for decades. And that we're just one of many studios that can help push it forward if we think about each other as a community over competition. So that's kind of a lot of what we're doing and how we're trying to think about our projects, not as service, but as kind of extensions, and how to reach out and build that design hub. The next kind of vision kind of moment we have is lead innovative projects by partnering in collaborative ventures. So this is one that I think we find really interesting. Is we've started our design model, our practice model as partnership for selected projects. So instead of taking a design fee, we take a partnership stake in these projects. And what it does is a few things. It establishes a relationship in where we have a vested interest in the design to the success of the business. And so our clients know that we're not trying just to design for ego, portfolio, or money, but we're trying to design for the success, the long-term success of that business, because we're vested in it as well. So we've started doing this collaborative method that also, because we're invested, can create continuous revenue streams, since smaller investment, portions of either the business or the property development can annually give returns. So that passive revenue establishes a more stable kind of grounding, so that we can use that to take on risks, to prototype, to just create a better sense of stabilization in a volatile design industry for our employees as well. So Studio is something that we're working on now and launching in July. I'm co-founding with a friend, Abby, to create a studio and venue space for creatives. So this is a physical design hub space in Ann Arbor that's been lacking, to provide that sort of space for photographers to rent hourly photo rental space. We plan on doing workshops, hosting micro gallery shows, all the like. So really creating a big white box for all creatives to come connect through a membership model to allow them to have a space of their own. So this one was kind of one of those main ones where Synecdoche is an architecture studio, right, does a lot of things and projects, but as a facilitator, we're now creating a physical space to facilitate a lot more of that creative work to happen as a design hub in the Midwest. Show you a couple more. Another one in progress is Bamboo. This is a project that we're development partners in. So again, we're designing the space for a slice of that pie. Architecturally, this is more of the approach. The studio, we're designing the business model along with designing the space. This one, we're definitely designing the space and improving the building as the scope of work.
Yeah, taking it from if you're familiar with Royal Oak, it's the old furniture store at 220 Main Street. What was it called? Bright Ideas Furniture Store. And so now it's going to be opened up to be a lot of co-working, a lot of private offices for co-working, the basement being utilized as event space, and then adding a big feature stair in the middle of the space that could be used to, sit on and have also presentations there, but also be kind of a connector for everybody throughout the whole building itself. And this is just about to start construction.
Yeah, we just picked up permits
just about to start.
This week.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another kind of one that we work through, all the design, making kind of those impacts. Ivy is a third partnership one. This one was really fun, right? It's part of this partnership too is small businesses. We engage in a lot of conversations at the start of projects, and small businesses a lot of the times that we can't afford you, we can't afford design, and we don't think that's an equitable way to get small businesses to launch their spaces. And so again, that partnership model helps offset some of that cash flow as a service to us, if we can float it, to make sure that the cash that our partners are investing go into launching the business, and that we can elevate the design as a value kind of towards that bottom line as our contribution. So again, we think that there's just a richness in local and small businesses launching in our communities, and how can design really help support that through partnership was a big thing. So while neither of us are highly in tune to salon services, it's one of those things that we really believe in the people and their talents, right? So they do good work. We noticed that we're doing this different type of good work, and together we thought this partnership would be a really successful one. So we're always looking at clients who are also doing good work in their field, and those are the types of projects that we want to take on. Yeah,
and then it allows us to, as you see in the photos of this, it allows us to kind of expand our possibilities of what we can fabricate. So since we have, our skin is in the game, so we're fabricating pieces in our shop that are a little more experimental, I guess you could say, in this one, that we're able to build trust with the owners of the salon to say, okay, this is how we're going to work on this project, or how we're going to work on what the salon is, and then be able to fabricate all of this in our shop and build a balance with what the general contractor is doing versus what we're doing. So we built in all of the stations and the reception desk, and the contractor built in other parts of the building, like the bathrooms and the core elements of the building.
Yeah, I think this one too, we did these kind of peace sign stations as we split everything up. We really wanted to just try something new with how we were designing stations, and how fabrication, some of those detail moments really enabled us to work through that. And that's something that being a partner and having a fabrication shop, right? This project dealt with integrated electrical with lighting on the retail, wood, metal, glass, upholstery, all within these individual components. And so again, being a fabrication shop where we have a novice skill set at a lot of different tool types, it allowed us to do and work on those layers of manufacturing all in one space, instead of working with an upholsterer, a metal worker, a woodworker. We kind of source kind of at a point and then assemble and detail it within our own space. So again, it gives us flexibility that we're really prototyping as we're building the finished product as well, through multiple kind of tool methods and strategies within our fabrication studio. So in all of these cases, I think we're not ever trying to be the mill worker. We're never trying to be the metal worker. We know that our extents as a more kind of alternative design practice is that we tinker at high quality with design moments, but these are all bespoke pieces. Like they have a kind of hand-built raw element too, and that we're building these things for ourselves and our projects, and that we're typically not building items like from shop drawings. Like that's not the realm of how we do those things. We do work collaboratively, and we'll talk about that a little later.
And we're also doing this like to be super cost efficient on these. So like, and flexible, like especially for projects like this where the budget is super, super low. We're doing it in a way that, I don't know, we could do it try to do it efficiently, but try to do it on the
it's a project management thing too, right?
Yeah.
Asking a contractor to manage multiple trades to finish this kind of intricate piece versus us managing it. It's a way of kind of cutting out a lot of communication and middlemen when we're just kind of controlling it in-house, so that we can kind of sketch and try out details rather than having to work through details, revise shop drawings, iterate back and forth, make sure, verify dimensions. We can kind of do that all ourselves in a way that kind of streamlines a lot of that communication. So we can also show you, there's a few projects that fabrication really kind of came about, that our kind of third kind of vision of the way that we want to approach architecture and design is to create projects that advance fabrication through architecture. I think this was a big one when we got our space 5 years ago. We started, tooling up because we were building small things for projects early on, really because of the budget that we needed to make. We needed to make the things ourselves to cut the budget to see the project happen the way that we wanted it to. And as we kind of grew up our studio, we tooled up in a way that we decided it was kind of there was a fork in the road. We're either going to fabricate or we're not. And we've seen a lot of kind of small architecture studios, do that. And then they really do figure out how to outsource and how to become an architecture firm, have bespoke and custom fabricated pieces, but not in-house, right? There is this kind of quality that we produce in other firms, but it isn't in their own fabrication shop. So for us, we did kind of take that tipping point and say, yep, we're all in. We're a design make architecture firm. And we say design, kind of caveat, design make is different than design build. Design build is a very kind of prototypical architecture construction type firm where they build the actual project, right, from ground up, setting foundations or being a general contractor. For us, design make means that we're going to make some things within the project, but we have no interest in being a general contractor. I don't want to manage plumbers and drywallers and painters. We want to just make the pieces that enhance the space in specific elements. So when we tooled up, we bought a CNC machine, we upgraded our welder, we, got spindles for metal bending and, just all the kind of tools that really get the core maneuvers of fabrication in our shop. Specialty things we can kind of outsource for a specific metal bend or things like that. It's not like we're going to get plasma cutters and everything. We know how to still outsource at some moments. And so we've kind of really stuck to design make as a core element that through the act of fabrication, we can work on architecture in a different mode other than kind of sketches and those sorts of iterations.
Even how we approach this project is kind of a nice clean break in this one, where we designed the whole space and bid out to the contractor to build the whole space and the counter, every element of the counter except for the front kind of feature design. And so we work closely with the contractor every week, every day for how this is being built, and then we measure it ourselves and field verify it, and then translate that into our model and build it in our shop with what Lisa was talking about with our CNC. And this happens pretty quick too. So we're involved in the construction process. We're slotted into the timeline of the contractor's work because everything is contingent upon each other. We had to get this part in before the countertops went in. So we had about 2.5 weeks to field verify the finished dimensions of the front of that counter, and then verify our model, and then fabricate it within that time and install it. And that's where, like, we like to stick to these very focused design elements that we can control, and we have some flexibility. We can flex out the design a little bit further into the timeline of the process or the project.
Yep. It also just gives us, that stronger communication with our contractors too.
Yeah,
so since they know that we're kind of in it, building stuff as well, we have those kind of communications of, hey, what's the best way to attach this, or strategically what kind of tolerances, or in what sequence do we want to build this. You have to be really careful as an architect about methods and means and how you slip yourself in as the fabricator versus the architect, but it still really elevates the conversation with contractors that they see us invested in the craftsmanship of building out the space, not just kind of the director of the details. That we have I think a really strong kind of collaboration and intention with our contractors that helps and pushes them to elevate their craftsmanship as well in a lot of these projects. So with some of those projects that we've done, we've worked on collaborating. I think maybe we'll start. I'm just going to jump in and explain kind of how we got to this. We designed. So I'm going to go through a quick lineage, which is the do good work and people will notice. What happened is we designed Duo's headquarters, we designed Deep Field. I'm going to do a quick itty bitty. So we designed Deep Field, which is a tech office in Ann Arbor. The neighboring company is Duo Security. So we designed, the founder of Duo, one of the co-founders of Duo, saw Deep Field, came over, broke in and said, hey, I really like this space. Can you make our space look like that? So walked through, said, yep, we can, fine tune some things, designed Duo. Along with Deep Field, both of these companies, tech companies themselves, have legal representation for acquisitions and venture capital and fundraising rounds, etc. So Gunderson Ann Arbor is a law office that does all of those things. They now have an Ann Arbor office because the tech hub in Michigan is growing so rapidly. So when one of the lawyers went to Deep Field, they said, hey, who designed your space? We're starting to get an office in Ann Arbor. We need an architect for it. And they mentioned us. So again, your design is a calling card that's going to lead to a lot of other things. That one project that we dug in deep, we didn't have an office at the time. We were fabricating this Deep Field project from our one-car garage and driveway, led to a whole series of Duo projects, this Gunderson project. And within this project, a lot of what happened built the momentum for fabrication partnerships. So Gunderson, their headquarters is in the Bay Area. And so they have a lead design architect for all of their projects, nationally, internationally, and so they were looking for that local partner. We were the local partner, and Wrapped is their lead design studio. And so when we started working with Wrapped, they understood what we brought to the table beyond just being an architect of record to stamp the drawings, but we could design as a partnership with them. So when we designed this space, we brought a few things. We talked about in this small space lined with offices, what we called this fantasy island. And we designed this, with them, but it was kind of our lead in design for these moments. They said, hey, you know how to design furniture. Go ahead and design these things that we need.
It's a great collaboration every time with Wrapped. Actually, they give us this kind of box. Like, we have the box of what the fantasy island wanted to be, and they're like, we wanted hickory, we wanted steel, and then we start putting the ideas out there of what we could do. Even with this one, the idea of bending the legs and tooling up to be able to do that. Like, we purchased the bending tools to be able to do it specifically for this project, and now we've used that continuously in other projects, and are doing another version of this one again on another floor of this building right now.
So yeah, this project and that relationship with Wrapped. The other part, there's the door handles that we 3D printed and electroplated. They were kind of on board to say, let's try some stuff out. So these are ABS 3D printed plastic handles, electroplated in copper, which is actually very great in the current circumstance about health and antibacterial materials. But this is something that we could custom design and fabricate. Again, we tooled up. We had never electroplated anything before, but everybody was willing to kind of take a risk and see what happened. And prototype became door handles for this office. So what that kind of led into is a whole series of fabrication projects where we've worked nationally to design with Wrapped and some other architecture firms as well to make pieces within other spaces. So typically our MO is to design pieces within our own spaces. But these again are pieces that we designed, but they end up somewhere else. So these were not millwork or shop drawings that we were requested as a fabricator, but we were a design maker of all of these components. So the whole space and the layout was done by Wrapped, and then they requested we make some leather strap screens, some storage cabinets,
signage,
a door. There's just like a whole, like there's basically a shopping list of these are all the things that we would love to be special moments within the space. Can you design and make them? And so we did, and we put them in a crate and we shipped them off to California.
Yeah, I think it gives it like the space, and even just as a designer ourselves, like the notion of, okay, you connected a little bit closer than just through a typical mill worker. You, like, as a designer, you'd be giving off shop drawings and just be like, okay, build that. But this way, kind of working with the architect and be like, okay, it's going to feel like this. It's going to be more, thought out process. We're never just sending shop drawings back and forth and checking off the boxes, but it's
we can
more
push
of a
the design instead of just verifying the dimensions. And by collaborating with other design firms when we're making these things, we're also learning about different design approaches and techniques and aesthetics and ways to do things. And so for us, it gives room to have additional trials and error, additional opportunities. Through working in California, we've had to learn more about logistics, right? This isn't about taking a project down the street to a local project. We have to figure out what packaging and timelines and freight logistics really look like, and prepping schedules.
To the 7th floor is the hardest thing. Getting
elevators.
Getting it across the country is easy.
Yeah.
Getting it up to the 7th floor
in a project, right? Like how it gets up there, how it gets assembled with us not on site, what those assembly instructions are, all kind of led to thinking about how we design things a bit differently. So we have to think not just as solid state objects, but objects that have to move across the country, be assembled by somebody else, and have to meet the design intentions of our language as well as architecture firms that we're collaborating with. So then from kind of learning about logistics and putting objects and products out there beyond kind of our own kind of architectural space, I think the last kind of project we'll talk about is work wall. And so given this current health pandemic that we've come to, and we started seeing a lot of less than appealing plastic partitions that we're concerned will end up in landfills. And so we designed what we call a work wall, which is basically a very glorified one of those cardboard Post-it easels that you can get at Staples. So it's a whiteboard wall, but it's acrylic as a partitioning device between desks, since the open office layout is a significant typology at this time for work areas. So it gives a pop-up cubicle in a sense, but allows for you to work on it and to move it around. So the idea that this doesn't clamp on and have to be dependent on a desk, but it as an independent object can also be carried into a meeting room or a workshop or a coffee table, so that you can have a touchdown meeting to whiteboard and brainstorm on this work wall wherever you are in the workplace. So we saw this, we're seeing a lot of this demand and having a lot of orders for coworkers or co-working spaces because they've been more flexible, but they see that as a co-working amenity, these as a object can work beyond the COVID-19 kind of circumstance that there's just a necessity for. So again, this is one that through material acquisition, manufacturers and things, we started talking to a lot of our suppliers and saying, hey, can you make these metal handles? Can you guys supply X amount of plastic at these dimensions and things? And so we really got into the product design, logistics side about mass ordering, inventory, shipment, and orders from bespoke to now product design. And so this is kind of the first product and the first spinoff. It went from an idea to pre-orders launched within 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's pretty rapid. I think, again, the whole like do and the do good work, we just did it. You just kind of have to throw it out there. It's in this pre-order caveat that we're working on something. It's kind of model 2.0, but they're out and installed, you can see. And so far, everyone's loving them.
Yeah. And we're trying to keep it so that another main goal was to have it all be made locally. So the plastic is cut near St. Clair Shores, and the metal is cut in Warren. So everything is really,
we're CNCing the wood.
We're making the wood pieces. So everything is made around Metro Detroit to be able to, support those type of businesses as well. Those fabrication shops that have laid off people, have had a hard time. And this is, I think, hopefully we'd like for that to help.
Yeah, boost their orders and economy too. So keeping the money local and, a locally made and designed product. I think really when we talk about that Great Lakes Design Hub, like how do we keep our ecosystem stronger by supporting each other? And so this again was one of those projects of, okay, what's the price point that small businesses can afford? I mean, we've seen ones that are double, triple, quadruple the price for the same size thing. Our concern is more about getting pieces in hand to small businesses that need them since it is kind of our first run at it too. It's not like this is going to be the thing that makes us money in 2020. This is the thing that's going to help us learn to see what other things that are possible in the future as well. So that's the realm of things. We like to work with other creatives in the community to kickstart new projects. We like to partner to try to get passive revenue streams so that our business model itself is more stabilized by being diversified and talking more about value than cost, right? So our value to the business breaks down into a percentage ownership, which is an interesting way instead of saying this many dollars, because that value over time can really compound in a way. And that fabrication is still kind of a core effort for us, because it allows us to very quickly go from idea to product or object or new detail or new understanding of a material pretty quickly by having it in-house. And that's Synecdoche. As of now, we keep changing, but.
Well, thank you for that run through. It's a bunch of things, I guess, it's such a wide, breadth of work. Cool. Yeah. Well, if anyone has questions, please use the Q&A button in Zoom or the comment field on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I'll get the comments here into the chat. While people are typing their questions, I do have a couple ones as well. So you're finishing talking a little bit about that partnership model. Tell me a little more about like how well that's worked out for you in terms of like, have people said no to that as like an upfront question? Have you found that return to be good, like, or is it too early to see? I know you did work for Duo, which like just was acquired like last year for like $1 billion.
2 billion. Yeah, Doug mentioned that to me.
Yeah.
He said, "Damn, you should have asked for shares when you, instead of a design fee when you took on that project." It's okay. I think we have a good relationship, right? I think the do good work and people will notice there's a good relationship there, and there's a lot of kind of potential for things. So a lot of the things that we've worked on now are very new, right? We talked about Bamboo and Studio, who are both under construction. So it's hard to know, but the feedback is that they're both successful and run numbers, and they seem to be like they'll be pretty good. Ivy opened up a year ago. So in terms of those three, they're all kind of very new, right? And the salon has been shut down for 3 months right now. So, I mean, it's early, but I think even just learning about how to set up businesses and partnerships, how to talk about value, and how to understand the kind of flexibility in business has been, I think, really valuable to us to really just do that type of work. In terms of people saying no, it's really a two-way street, because we've also had projects that are like, we'd be open to this or that. And being in a partnership is a long-term relationship. You have to know their values and what they're trying to get out of it too. So there are projects that are just, we just want to make money. It's like, well, what's, community impact, and what's your service and goals? And so we're also weighing, we don't want to take on every project as a partnership, because we are covering our costs on the front end to basically buy into this work. But overall, I think it's been really successful as just a way to open up the idea of doing business differently in architecture. There have been pretty standard models that have been done. And so this just kind of opens up, and we try to be really transparent about it, so that other people can try different variations of it. And I mean, so far, we even had one that we tried to open a beer garden, and the landlord wouldn't let us do site modifications, and site planning got really messy and all these other things. And so that one it didn't actually happen. And so sometimes we even start generating the idea of starting something and it doesn't pan out. But the idea that now our mindset is more about like, how do we just start things that we want to see in our community, instead of wait for a client to tell us that they want to start something and us hope we get hired to help make that happen. We're now generating the types of businesses and programming we want to see, which I think is valuable.
That's super powerful. I think like the build it and they will come model is really cool. You've talked a bit about like getting businesses and like acquiring business, or like acquiring new business as like a part of like do good work and people will come. Talk a little bit about like these like installations, the things that like aren't necessarily like a big revenue item. You're not building out like a build out for a shop, but it's something that like can be a really cool like showcase for yourself. Like how have you seen those as like avenues for new businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are like a lot of the installations that we've done, like with the art center. I ended up on the board for 2 years at the art center after that, because of that relationship. From that, I'm now the chair of the art and public committee at the art center, where they were doing, 1 or 2 kind of art in public kind of moments. And I was like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Let's do a mural festival. Like, let's do a lot. We need critical mass, not just kind of one moment at a time. And so I think what the installations do is they just kind of establish us as a practice that's interested not just in revenue, but in the kind of other metrics of success and quality in design. So it is kind of one of those things that I think it just leads to, it validates us as kind of a genuine design firm that isn't just interested in kind of chasing after whatever big project with whatever big bottom line, but that we are, that's just not our, it's not our goal.
I also see it as kind of a practice for us and our team to like, okay, we have something that we do very quick. We don't have a real problem to solve with it because most of our work is in architecture. A lot of it's problem solving, and we have a clear direction we have to go in. But with some of these, it's like, okay, we have an open space and we have 24 hours to make it. And what do we do? And so it's a moment to just stretch your brain and do something. And I think it builds the team mentality a little bit more each time.
I really like that as like a team building, like problem solving challenge. We have a question here from Juliana. She says, the acrylic divider is an interesting way of locally sourcing and accommodating the need of COVID supply. What kind of new ways of design do you see adapting into spaces in the future due to COVID in a more permanent way?
A lot.
A lot. Definitely, like we always have to deal with bathrooms in all of our designs. I think we always try to, in many other reasons, for other reasons, we always try to do single-use bathrooms. Like that's a permanent fixture that will probably be continuing on as kind of a back of house thing. But we also look even at Bamboo, the difference between open office versus private office.
Yeah.
And they didn't lose as many
desks. So when we were like space planning to say, okay, for distancing and things, what's your use percentage given the kind of current restrictions? And Bamboo co-working is a lot of private offices versus just like a tech office with open office space. And Bamboo is to a 73% efficiency ratio once we distributed the desks, where another open office that we were at was more at like 65%.
Yes.
So you get a different margin when you distribute, which when we're talking about this in the architecture scale, long-term, it has big effects on real estate and how people are going to work. If they want to keep on the open office mentality, they're just going to have to acquire more real estate and what that cost means. But we're seeing things like if you work from home, how do people connect, right? There's a value in connection. And so the types of spaces are going to be different. And so when this all came down, like studio is like an event space, what does that mean? But we kind of dove in deeper and it was like, well, if people work from home, at some point they're going to want, quarterly team meetings, gather, annual company party, whatever. There's a space for that because they don't have their own rented space. So I think there's still a huge desire for connection. And so we're going to see spaces that facilitate that in a different way in the future. And that the workplace design is going to change, and that we're probably going to distribute it between a network of spaces, right? The big companies like Facebook said, we're going to have a ton of smaller spaces and no big headquarters anymore. And there's a lot of people saying we're going to work from home for at least this year, maybe permanently. So what kind of spaces as a company do you need? So it's architecture is slow, right? Just even the permit and construction process. So I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of dynamics in real estate and what people are actually building in commercial spaces for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's you mentioned like the bathrooms and like even like Bamboo. Like I noticed you had the big staircase, in that space, and it's like so many different design trends. Trend's probably not the word you'd like to use, but those sort of like I guess spaces that get thrown in a lot of different designs. Do you have any that you particularly gravitate to that you like, the Instagrammable bathroom, stuff like that? Or is it something that you're trying to do it on a per client basis?
So like bathrooms, I think bathrooms are a really great tool for a lot of reasons. And we've given them a bit of attention. I think one project that we did was Nightcap that we've really
I definitely have a
Yeah,
selfie
share.
in that bathroom for sure.
I mean, which is great, right? Like it has the You Look Good floor, but the kind of background to that project, I'll just show it real quick, was also that these bathrooms themselves are single use. They've got sinks on the outside, so it's not even that they're single use with a toilet and a sink on the inside. Let me see, there's a photo on here. This is like a whole different lecture thing. But because there's sinks on the inside, what happens, probably in the video even, is that's not to code. And in Michigan building code, bathrooms are still required to be labeled by gender. So even if they're single use, if you have a single use, of equal quantities, you have to label half of them male and half of them female. And we didn't agree with any of that. So we had to go to the Building Board of Appeals and say, hey, we're meeting the fixture count. We need this many toilets, we need this many sinks. Your code is written in such a silly way, we can't do it the way that we want to have it designed, which is 4 bathroom stalls and 3 accessible sinks to everybody. And so through that appeals process, we did those bathrooms and sinks, but it's not per code. Like we had to go through the whole process, make our case about it and say gender neutral is like one gender we just don't support. So these single use bathrooms allow for everybody to use whatever bathroom they want. And then they've engaged in, these common area sinks for just a more kind of equitable space to connect between them. So really bathrooms can be a tool, not just for cleanliness in the age of COVID, but also for social change. It's one of those places that is very kind of gender biased. And so we're pushing the law, right? The building code is law to say we have to be more equitable in it. So yeah, we made some really nice tile work and we made some really nice selfie lighting and all of those things that the bar needs. But we also said, hey, bathroom design itself really impacts the social structure of the built environment that we kind of see over and over again.
Yeah, that equity in this space, like at least gender equity in that space, is really noticeable. And I remember that bathroom more than like a lot. I think I went to Festival, saw your installation there, and then went to Nightcap that same night. So I got a whole taste of your work in one night. But I really appreciate that sort of mind to some amount of social change with architecture and with design. There's a design associates like studio fairly close to, I think, where you are, the Henry Dreyfuss Associates. I don't know if they're still there, but they're right off of where I guess that's 23 meets 96. I don't know, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think a lot of their work revolved around making work like the John Deere tractors and stuff like that usable by people and comfortable and ergonomic. They put out the human scale, which was like the very first like ergonomic handbook for designers. This is leading me to a question about what are some other places that you can like see amounts of like inclusion and social change and equity and justice in your design work? I know it's really hard for an architect to think about a lot of that, but it's, important to consider.
Oh no, it's my favorite thing. So like we alluded to Parking Day was one of them, right? Like we hijacked, and this is a national event. This is not something that we created, but we pushed Ann Arbor to do it and a lot of kind of creatives, right? Like housing a car is expensive and it takes up a lot of valuable real estate within cities that could be used to house actual people. So I'm on planning commission too, for the fact that a lot of the projects in architecture, weren't getting through for adaptive reuse or requiring cost prohibitive kind of ingredients such as a huge amount of parking for these development projects. And when you think about a parking space can be a studio apartment, like a large parking space, 2 parking spaces can be one bedroom apartment. And the cost of a parking space, like an underground parking space, is $70,000. So when you have to distribute that into the apartment rents, all of a sudden your rent rates go above any sort of accessible cost. So these are the types of things that through zoning requirements, through programming of buildings, both by market-driven forces and code forces, you can blow out the cost to the point that it's not equitable and accessible for people. And so those are the types of things that we're really looking at now, are how to help push the code, and how do we insert ourselves into that process. Being on planning commission, we talk about land use. And so land use is zoning single family housing. So zoning for single family housing says that every household needs to be able to afford, cover the cost of that parcel. You can't share that cost with another family or anybody else. And so it becomes a burden of cost to say, we expect this use to be just one single family to cover that cost. And when you think about form-based, a duplex could be smaller than a McMansion. And so we're saying that we're okay with a large McMansion as long as it's one family, but we're not okay with a small duplex because it's two families. And that's a problem to me. Right? That's a problem of architecture. That's a problem of form. That's a problem of how we're building cities right now. And those are things that architecture can really put the pressure on when we think about building scale design and what it means for social justice and equity.
That's a really good point. Like, zoning boards are not the sexiest part of anyone's design portfolio, but as you said, probably one of the most important.
Yeah.
Are there any other ways and avenues that someone could get involved in shifting a zoning board or anything like that?
So especially kind of for this audience, in Ann Arbor right now, the other thing that we're doing a big change on is sign ordinances. And one of the big debates was even about the size and duration of signs, and the language was even about how long can signs be in certain areas, mainly the discussion really kind of triggered real estate, how long for rent and for sale signs can be out, because Ann Arbor, as a university community, if they put for rent signs out, they can be out for a year. And the discussion turns to blight, right? The blight of signs that are out all the time. We know that that's just a trigger word to a lot of ways to do suppression. But signage itself, as a single kind of entity, especially with a lot of graphic designers, is a way that you can talk about messaging, the amount of real estate to share that messaging, who can have that messaging. So if you think even about multi-story buildings, usually the ground floor has much more rights to signage than the upper floors. So if you think about a startup design studio, they might be on the second, third floor, but they can't have exterior signage marking their suite the same way as a storefront store could. And so those are, again, as you design kind of graphics and signage, it really plays out into how that application is catering towards certain audiences. So I'd recommend diving into sign ordinances as graphic design.
My partner did a lot of work with signage in Detroit, and the sign ordinances in Detroit is a thick manual. It's a lot longer than you'd expect it to be, but it's not fun to read through.
Signs, right? Painted wall signs are a beautiful character of Detroit. But in terms of how they're regulated or how you can do more of them, it's actually very difficult. And so even the idea of signage as advertisement versus murals as art, and where that line is drawn, is really fascinating to start to think about.
Detroit started, cutting down, or not cutting down, but painting over murals and old signs that were advertisements, and even current advertisements, because some random person had the authority to make the determination on what was blight and what was art and what was advertisement, and you didn't really have a say in the matter. So it's really sad. We lost some good stuff in the past 5-10 years that way. Yep. Switching subjects a little bit, your fabrication shop, I'm personally very jealous. I wish I had a CNC router in my garage right now. what are some of those like tools that you're using and the skill sets you're using in order to develop some of these ideas?
And a lot of it it built upon kind of tooling up one tool at a time. When we started, is like, okay, we can buy a table saw now. Okay, we can buy a better saw now. And then it was about 3 years ago, we were like, okay, we need to make a decision if we're going to cut off the fabrication and just have someone more skilled do it, or dive deep. And that's when we bought the CNC router as kind of okay, we're going to buy this advanced tool because we have talent from the University of Michigan, who a lot of students who go to architecture school there get trained on the same machine. So there's already a talent pool here in town that we can utilize and hire from, and then use that knowledge to advance what we do, because we're not experts at it, but there's people who are, that we like to hire. So we've used that as kind of a way of like, okay, and
it's a hiring tool.
It's a hiring tool, but it's also kind of where we say we're not mill workers, or we're not just carpenters. Like we're now able to kind of select exactly what we want to make based off of the tool we have and how we want to advance kind of what we want to know about it or what we want to try next. So even now, like we ship out some of our steel work and metal work to other metal workers around the local area, because for some things, we don't need to be welding everything for that. But when we want to try something out, we want to try out different bends, we want to try out a different, hybrid to put together metal, steel, leather, whatever, then we'll take that on in-house. So it's still a learning process of, okay, we've learned how to detail it and build it. Now we can have someone else build it, and we're going to move on to the next thing that we don't know yet.
Yeah, I think this whole process is, well, is it cheap enough that it'll just make it faster? Sure, buy it. Is it flexible enough that you can hack it or prototype or test or push push a material or detail on it? Then yes, let's get it. If it's something that is a specific tool that does a specific thing, that's when we typically look around and say, okay, I don't need to buy a tool to make a 1/4-inch metal hem on the edge of a thing. Call the metal fabricator, right? So we're also building up our fabrication shop of tools that are flexible and can be hacked to try to do new and different things. So it actually pushes our design language and detailing forward more than it is about just making stuff. I think is kind of the benchmark of that breakpoint between outsourcing and building inside.
It's really hard not to buy every pretty tool that comes across. Do you have any like on your wish list, like fabric cutters and stuff like that?
Nice ability to cut softer things like fabrics and like paper and cardboard, and knife cutting potential would be nice. But other than that, we're not really. I think the CNC does so much for us, and we have people who have laser cutters who will cut steel, and it's easy to just send that and have that done. That the CNC is very versatile, actually. Like we can cut a lot of different things and do it and use it in different ways. There's a whole bunch of different bit types and ways to
I mean,
use
even
it,
with that, you can hack it and get a knife cutter on a
can
CNC router.
Yeah.
So it's okay, fine. I'll buy a CNC router.
Flexible tool we have.
If you need something, just shoot us an email. We can find something out too.
Definitely.
I mean, we've done it, right? Like it is kind of one of those things that we made a decision to invest in, but we've worked, with other artists and creatives that just, hey, I'm making this thing. Can you help me cut it? This isn't asking for like a flood of emails, but like, I think, again, working in collaboration instead of competition and like sharing those types of resources, while everybody can't buy one, like sometimes it's better that everybody doesn't need one. If you know what you're making it for, like build the community, and we can kind of be there for that.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm the current resident 3D printer in my neighborhood, and I've made a bunch of Halloween costume like accessories and stuff for it. So yeah, shoot me an email. Nice. Well, I don't want to use up too much of your time. It's like 1 o'clock. We've had you here for an hour. I got one more question, personal question for you before I let you go. I saw that you did the redesign of, well, formerly BTB Cantina, now just Cantina. What was it like going into that space and trying to make it look a little more classy instead of the, I don't know, crazy place that it was for me in college?
Yes, like since working with the owners, it's like, okay, it was a very tight budget. Again, it's like, okay, what can we do with this little bit? Where can we make an impact? What can we clean up and make make special moments throughout it.
I think the big, right, like it was, right, previously it was just a big blur, right? And all mayhem happened everywhere. And what we really tried to do is say, if anybody wants to show up before the sun sets, what is that experience? And then what's the experience after sunset? And so that, I think that was kind of how we approach design, is how can you splice up the space without completely dividing it? To be able to allow it to be just like a taco, like you can go in, grab some tacos and study for the day. And then like allow it to have a good DJ session and dance floor. And so that's when we said, like, stop putting tables at the dance floor and just let it be a place to have a rave. And so that's when we put up like the rope screen wall and stuff. And we just try to like really program those spaces separately to be honest about what it was instead of just let it run mayhem. So very light touches, but very intentional about just knowing what, we didn't try to fight against it. We just said, this is what it is. How do you make it work in these segments?
And just using a color that would just tie it all together. That blue on the lights and
the base, and
everywhere.
And
wall.
We need to clean all this up.
We dyed all those light fixtures ourselves in our shop, actually.
Yeah, we dipped all those in paint. And the rope we dipped.
And the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
and we wrapped, it was loud as hell. So we bought a bunch of Mexican blankets to wrap on foam padding to just make a softer wall. It was just like little moments, but really it was to just create some continuity in there.
It looks great. And I'm really happy that you're local as well. It's great to be able to actually walk into a lot of these spaces and see them and experience them. It's not, I don't have to get on a plane to go to Barcelona to look at someone's like cool shop or something like that.
Yeah.
We'll take you on a tour next when we can all go to all the places.
Yeah, I'd love that. Make sure we can stop and get our $4 quesadillas at BTB or at Cantina now.
And we really kind of talked about we're like, a Synecdoche bus tour is very possible. Like we could really do a bar crawl. So all this an architecture bar crawl with our stuff. But
that sounds fun. I'm down for it. Let's make it happen.
I mean, and that's right. Like, I think Cantina is one of those good examples too, where like branding, space, and like the experience all come together. That right, like architecture, layout, like safety is kind of one layer, but when you really put yourself in a space and imagine how that business wants to function, you've got to kind of build up beyond just the kind of architectural ingredients. So we really just we like working with all the local owners too, and I think that's why we like small businesses, because we're talking directly to the owners, not some kind of middleman that's, oh, my boss gave me this project to manage. It gives us a way to talk directly about, hey, does this business model actually work, or can we tweak it? And they can just make the call, and we can tweak it in the architecture side of what so we can help design and fine tune the business along with the architecture when we're working on these projects, when you're working a lot closer with the owner, which has been great.
That's great. That's the dream for any designer as well. So, well, thank you again so much. This has been a total blast. Thanks for taking an hour out of your day to join us. Do you have any last things you want to plug? Anything that people should look out for?
We will be announcing some fundraising for the murals in July. And so come out in August and September and see a bunch of new work by regional artists, a pretty diverse crew, which we're excited about. And come out to Studio when it opens in July. And if you guys are interested in work walls, they're all for sale too, which is lots of things happening.
Great. Yeah, I got to look into those work walls for when I have to go back into my loud open office.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
here. All right. Thanks for having us. This is
Yeah,
great.
thanks for coming by. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good Monday, everyone.